All right, Angela Lerro, my good friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. How are you doing today? It's so
I
good
am
to see
fantastic.
you.
It's so good to see you. We connected at where was it? Oh, it was at Meat Stock.
Meat stock.
Yeah,
Yeah, just a
with
few months ago.
Wired for Healing.
Yes, with
Scott
Scott
Everson,
Everson. Yes.
amazing, amazing, amazing man. And it was kind of interesting. I saw him last week. I was down in Sarasota, and he came over for steak, and we were
Awesome.
talking about Wired for Healing versus Wired for Health. And
Hmm.
I was very interested in your story because you have about mindfulness and how the mind and the connection is so critical and important in this story. And maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got into this, both the carnivore world and this mindful world.
Well, that's a great question. It's a little bit of a journey, but I love sharing this journey because it's been so empowering, and it's a blessing how I've gotten introduced to both worlds, both the spiritual mindfulness world and the carnivore world. And I've been really working hard to bridge the two together because I think that two can, the two of these worlds just created one big miracle in my life. And I'll forever be grateful for that. But my journey actually started about 11 years ago. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had a lifelong history of severe, chronic, mysterious health issues that the doctor just never could really pinpoint or figure out. And then in 2013, I was diagnosed with breast cancer,
Mm. Wow.
and I was only 28, and it was really mysterious how I could have gotten it because, it didn't run in my family. And it was actually really difficult for the doctors to even diagnose it because it was so dismissed, since like they had no reason to even check me for it.
At
Eh,
such a young age.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was very lucky to get the diagnosis just because eventually my breast was bleeding, and they were able to find it, but they had to find it through a biopsy because my mammogram and ultrasound both came out negative.
Hmm.
And so unfortunately, by the time they found it, was so spread that I didn't really have a choice. I had to have a mastectomy. And I didn't have to have any chemo or radiation. However, the tumor was so large, they had to do the mastectomy because there was no other choice at the time. So during that recovery time, I started developing even more chronic symptoms and
Mm.
mysterious illnesses,
Mhm.
such as like severe allergies. And that's how I was introduced to the spiritual world, because at that time, carnivore wasn't really a thing for me. My doctors were encouraging me to eat more plants. And one of my symptoms post cancer was that I was developing all of these food allergies and histamine responses. But at the time, I didn't really know that mast cell activation syndrome was a thing. I didn't know that histamine intolerance was a condition. So I was just relying on my mind and my faith to get me through this. And that's when I was introduced to the spiritual world of Reiki and energy work, and really focusing on healing my mind with by creating new neural pathways and energetic patterns within my body so that my body could get out of its own way to heal and which helped me connect more to my spirit, my mind, and my soul. I mean, my mind, body, and my soul were so misaligned during that time because I had so many out sources that were telling me to do different things. I'd go to the doctor and they'd tell me to eat more plants and get more fruits and vegetables in and limit my meat consumption. And, oh, you have this condition. And it was just like everything was just starting to be contributed to the breast cancer. It was breast cancer. They didn't want to really look further for any other root causes other than, oh, it's breast cancer. So I really relied on the spiritual community and the spiritual world to help me reconnect myself and my soul to my spirit. And that's when I started to really, learn the works of Wayne Dyer and, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Mikao Usui, who is the founder of Reiki, energy healing. And that's what really helped me heal in such a profound way. However, there were still a lot of issues that I was having with foods. I would wax and wane during certain times. So even though I was finding this balance and healing spiritually, and I could feel the profound results physically and emotionally, I knew that something was still off within me, but I just didn't know exactly what it was. And then I had to have, 4.5 years later. So I started my practice, my holistic practice then, and it was in 2015 that I started my practice. And I was doing Reiki and spiritual and energetic work, but I wasn't really utilizing like nutrition or diet. I was doing the best I could, eating the right foods that I thought were right for my body, because at the time it was eat more plants. So I'm eating all the plants and I'm eating all the things that I thought were good. But then I had to have this emergency surgery because I developed thoracic outlet syndrome on my left cervical rib. And after that surgery, it unlocked this Pandora's box of dis-ease. And my body went crazy. And I didn't know that at the time that I was also living in a water damaged home. So I was struggling with mold toxicity for how long? I don't, probably 3 years from living there. And then I found out after nearly dying from Lyme disease that this whole time, after over my 30 years of mysterious chronic illnesses, including the breast cancer, was all Lyme disease that was at the root of it. And between living in a water damaged home and then having these surgeries, which created an opportunity for this infection to just run itself wild in my body. And it was like everything came back. My histamine issues came back. I was fainting like 15 times a day. I couldn't even stand up longer than 5 minutes without passing out. I couldn't walk without help. I had to train my dog how to become a service dog just to help me get off the couch and just go to the bathroom because I would faint sometimes just standing up. So there was so many autonomic dysfunctions that I was diagnosed with. And I really wasn't even diagnosed with Lyme disease until about 2.5 years after that surgery. So at that point, I was nearly on my deathbed.
Wow.
And that's actually how I got introduced to the carnivore community. So from having all of these, so I was going into anaphylactic shock after almost everything I was eating. And
what was your primary diet at the time?
It was plant-based, mainly plant-based.
And this is how many years ago now?
This was 2019 to 2021 was when I finally got diagnosed with Lyme. And that's when I started the carnivore diet. So the surgery was April 2019. And I didn't get diagnosed with Lyme until February 2021. So to put that into perspective, it was just, I was recovering from this surgery, but it was just, everything was just getting worse and worse and worse. And they even took away my driver's license. I wasn't allowed to drive for like
Wow.
a year and a half because of my fainting episodes. And then add on the anaphylactic episodes, the doctors said that, well, if you have autonomic dysfunction, then having this like mast cell activation goes hand in hand. And so you're just going to have to learn how to manage it. And I
Learn how to manage it.
learned how to manage the histamine and the reactions.
Psychologically?
Right. Well, they just said you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life. And I just remember looking at my neurologist and I said, well, with all due respect, if you're telling me I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life, I only foresee this rest of my life being about 4 or 5 months, because this is going to kill me. Like, I can't keep stabbing myself with an EpiPen every other week and getting, an ER ride or an ambulance ride to the ER. How many times can I do that and get so lucky to be saved?
And the explanation from the doctors, even why did you get breast cancer? Why did you get all this autonomic dysfunction, mast cell activation, and Lyme disease? Where did it come from?
I mean, logically, it came from a tick. We don't, but really, I don't know.
But do they know? Do we doctors know why Angela Lerro was overcome with breast cancer at a young age and then all these other systemic inflammatory conditions?
Right.
Don't know.
Don't know. I have several theories. I believe our environment definitely pulls the trigger for a lot of these illnesses. And I don't just mean physical, like a pathogen. I mean trauma. Trauma can impair our nervous systems and our immune systems, stress. There's so many different spiritual and energetic factors that can go into our health and our healing.
But the healthcare system doesn't have an answer to why.
No, definitely not. That was the thing. And when I was going through all of this, none of them ever checked me for Lyme. None of my doctors in California ever checked me for Lyme. It really wasn't until I was getting to the point where I said, okay, I have to make a decision on what am I going to do here? So I ended up finding somebody to sublease my apartment in Los Angeles. And I just packed up and moved back to Pennsylvania to be with my mom so I could just find answers. Because like nobody in California is finding this out. Maybe somebody in Pennsylvania would have an idea. So I went home, and within a matter of a week, I got diagnosed. Like, we did a blood test and it all came back positive for Lyme and the coinfections. So I had Babesia and Bartonella. We didn't test for anything else. But at the same time, I remember I was cooking and I went into anaphylaxis again. And after I ate, and it was a friend that was struggling with Lyme that was just calling my mom to check in on me. And I was in the middle of the reaction, and he was like, has she ever been checked for Lyme? And I said, no. Why would I? I've lived in California at this point for 20 years. Why would I be checked there? And so it was a real shock when I found out. And then we went through our history to find out what it was. But that's actually when I had this moment. And because at the time when I was going through everything, it was really hard for me to stay true to my faith, because I felt so disconnected from my spirit. And I almost felt like an imposter, because here I am believing that, mind, body, spirit, and I've helped so many people, including myself, heal miraculously with my, with energy work and reconnecting the mind, body, and spirit. But I think the biggest issue that I was not getting was the nutrition down, because as we all know in the spiritual community, everybody's pro-vegan diets. So it wasn't like I was just influenced by the medical community on being plant-based or nearly vegan, but I was also influenced by my community.
Do you think that the vegan vegetarian world is essentially a medication world, because the plants provide the medicinal products to make us feel better, but it's only temporary because you have to keep on with the drugs, which are plant-based, which is essentially where our pharmaceutical world really came from, because the quest for spices and more plants around the globe was finding the next drug, the next medication, until we figured out how to synthetically make them. But historically, plants were our poison and our medication. In the vegan vegetarian world, the naturopathic world is essentially working to treat us in a medication world.
I 1000% agree with that. I can't, even when I was on this journey, when I even started with holistic health, every naturopath and holistic doctor just wanted to push a medicinal herbal supplement or some sort of plant-based supplement onto me. And I couldn't take it. Every time if you think about it, if I'm going into anaphylaxis after eating a plant, could you imagine what I went through when I tried to take a supplement in a tincture form where it's so concentrated? Wasn't pretty.
So you had developed breast cancer, mast cell activation, autoimmune diseases, Lyme disease, and you're working on energy work and healing, mind and body, and that connection that I think is very important. And you sound like me, and a lot of the things that I was connecting with years ago was energy work and mindfulness work, but I didn't connect the nutritional part of it and what the real cause was. So who introduced you to Carnivore, and what was the transition like for you, and how did you get there?
So I was, in addition to my plant-based ways, I was a really big cook. Like I was in the process right before I got sick, I was in the process of creating recipes, and I was hanging over a stove probably a good couple hours a day, just making recipes up just to help with my own healing. And the way I got introduced to the carnivore world was basically by default when I realized that my reactions were actually stemming not from the small amount of meat that I was eating, but actually the plants. And I got really terrified, actually, because I'm like, how am I supposed to live on meat? This is the only food that it was still causing me to have a slight reaction, but my reaction to it wasn't as profound as the plants. And I just remember I went into my own meditative state. I'll never forget this moment. I just remember I was laying in bed and I was praying and meditating, and I was like, all I can eat is meat. Am I going to, like, God, source, spirit, energy? I need to know right now. Can you just please give me a sign that, or like a message or a download? Because I receive a lot of information. I download a lot of information. So when I ask for it, I receive it, and I receive it in my heart. And in that moment, I just remember getting this message from spirit saying that you need all of the energy that in the world right now, and your cooking days need to be limited. So eat the meat. It's the most nutrient dense thing you can give your body. And it will not only you will not only conserve energy, because at the time I couldn't even chop a vegetable if I tried, but I did it anyways, thinking that I needed them. So it's like, you'll not only conserve energy, but you'll gain healing and strength. I will never forget that message. I wrote it down. And I just said, okay, well, I need to be guided to this, like, because I didn't know that there was a tribe. I didn't know that there were doctors that even cared about this diet. I didn't know there was a community. I was just kind of out in the deep water, just like, all I can eat is meat. And I somehow stumbled across, at the time, Paul Saladino's book, The Carnivore Code. This was back when he was carnivore, because this was in February 2021. And I downloaded it and listened to it, because at the time my nervous system was so shot I couldn't even read a book if I tried. So I listened, and it blew me away that there were all of these scientific studies about how plants don't want to be eaten, and all of the defense chemicals that they have, and how, animals defend themselves with hooves and teeth versus plants that defend themselves with the chemicals, with their leaves, their stems, their roots. So it made perfect sense to me that these plants were just way too powerful for my body, and I had been over consuming them, between the juices and the consumption of them. I mean, 95% of my diet were plants and plants, like fruits and vegetables. Spinach and almond butter were my two, and Brussels sprouts were like my favorite things. So, and they, like you said, like they were so addicting. That was the other thing. I just remember being addicted to almond butter. Like, if you take a spoonful of almond butter, I could eat the whole jar. Same thing with like any type of vegetable. I could make a tray of vegetables, and I could sit there and binge eat the whole thing. But
can't we all?
Right. And then we're in pain afterwards.
Yeah, terrible.
So that's truly how I came to the diet. It was kind of a miracle. It was just, well, this is all I can eat without having a reaction. And then I just was Googling, the carnivore diet. And then I think I even was on a Facebook group for histamine intolerance and mast cell. And I typed something like a question, like, does anybody survive here on just eating meat? And a friend, well, he's a friend now, but at the time he also reached out to me and talked to me about, I think it was like Dr. Sean Baker mentioned his book to read as well, and that he was doing this diet to heal. So it was like, oh, cool. I know one person that is doing this diet, but it was hard not to feel a bit crazy, especially considering how plant-based I was. I had to do a lot of unlearning and relearning. And it felt like after just the first couple of weeks, just seeing like little improvements, just seeing more energy. Oh, my fainting spells aren't as bad. Oh, I'm having a little more clarity. Oh, I can start walking again. I'm not so bedbound. It was little by little. And at the same time, I had seen a doctor for the Lyme. It was a Lyme literate medical doctor. And he looked at my labs. He looked at my symptoms. He looked at me because I looked so sick. And he said, I'm really sorry, but I can't even treat you, because anything that I would give you would potentially kill you. Because he goes, I use herbs and I use antibiotics, and I think those are both too strong for you. It's like, you need to get well a little bit better and get your body back into a stronger, healthier place before I even treat you. So I brought up to him that I was doing this carnivore diet, and he said, I don't care what it is. He's like, because at the time, I should also mention that I had lost a significant amount of weight from the disease and all of the flare-ups. I went down to 89 pounds.
Wow. Wow.
And, you know, I lost, you know, more than just weight. Like I felt like I lost everything.
Mm.
So the other doctors wanted to put me on a feeding tube and put me on TPN, and I refused. I didn't want more chemicals in my body, and that was more terrifying to me than eating meat. So I said, no, I'm not going to take your medicine. I'm just going to eat meat and figure it out and just take a leap of faith that this is going to help me heal. And it did.
So this was back in
2021, February 2021.
How long did it take for you to feel better on Carnivore?
It was, I would say, pretty quickly. Like, I would say it took me a good 3 months to really get adjusted to it, because there were certain things that I was still holding on to. You know, I would eat like certain vegetables that I could still eat. I wasn't ready to give them up. Or white rice, for example. I couldn't stomach that much fat in the beginning because my digestion was so sluggish and impaired. So I had to gradually work my way, because I had already had experience with keto and carnivore, like keto and paleo, plant-based, you know. So it wasn't as drastic in terms of going, I mean, yes, eating just the meat, but because I had been in a place where I was trying other things in the past, I really just thought, okay, well, I think I could, if I'm still able to eat Brussels sprouts, then I'm still able to eat a little bit of white rice. Like maybe I'll just, you know, do like 3 days of just meat, and then one day I'll have some rice just to see. And I was like, and so, yes, I was still making improvements, but it really took me, like, I would say a good 6 months to truly just get rid of the excess. And then I was able to go full in as my body adapted and was able to get more energy from fat and digest more fat. I think that was my biggest challenge, was just my body was just so impaired that I couldn't take in that much fat so quickly and so early on.
Psychologically, because we have the physical part of this and the psychological part of it, how were you doing psychologically on these changes? And then we'll talk about the physical part of it also.
Yeah.
Hey, wow. Because I look at our nutrition like I look at politics and religions. It's our belief systems. They're very difficult to change. We're built to be difficult to change minds, because that was our protection. Is we learned this way, you stuck this way. Now you're going to go outside your normal, mindful sort of barriers, right? Or the boundaries of our lands, but it's our mind boundaries. So how did you push beyond the psychological boundaries into from a plant-based to a sort of a combo-based into a fully meat-based?
To be honest, a lot of prayer and meditation. A lot of prayer and meditation. Healing. I mean, I had to, it wasn't, because here's the thing, when we're removing something from our diets, it's not just a physical thing. We're removing something energetic as well.
Yeah.
And when we remove that, there's a lot of other stuff that's been hiding underneath that. There's like, we're all, you know, we're multi-layers, we're multi-dimensional beings here. So a lot of trauma came up, like a lot of, I guess you could say it was almost like a dark night of the soul.
You want to talk a little bit about that trauma and how we can all learn from that, because we all carry the mindful trauma with us.
Well, the first thing that really comes up is loss and fear. You know, we operate on two vibrations, love and fear. And when we're sick, we're often operating in this state of fear. And we feel like we've lost so much that when we think about having to eliminate something else out of our lives, whether it be our diet, whether it be our home, whether it be our just, environment, there's a lot of loss that comes with it. Like, we don't, as humans, like we're used to connect. We love to connect. So when we feel like we've got to let go of a connection that we felt was serving us, even if that connection wasn't good for us, we still go through this really deep loss. And I feel like that a lot of us can have a really hard time letting go of a story that was created in our minds.
The abuse we know is better than that mystery beyond that.
Yes.
And so ultimately our fear of even losing the pain, is there a sense that pain is just part of our lives and we're supposed to be living that?
Right. It's like the devil we know, right? It's familiarity. And I even see that with a lot of my clients. They say that they're ready to heal, but they're really not, because they're not ready to let go of that story. They're not ready to let go of that pain. And maybe consciously they are, but subconsciously, like deep subconsciously, they're not. And that can really block us from achieving wellness. Because we often, when we're sick, we focus so much about how much we're losing, but we don't think enough about how much we can gain.
Dr. Rob Kiltz, another beautiful, spectacular day. And I just want to send thanks to all those for watching the newest episode of Carnivore Conversations. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming platforms to gain access to the full 1 hour episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more to come. God bless.